Good morning, good afternoon. We're going to go over a couple of examples with iExcel BB.5 and then BB.8. If you already finished BB.5 on Friday, then you can skip ahead and fast forward till I get to BB.8. But they're essentially actually the same. They're very, very similar. So with BB.5, they give you an equation. So here's an example where k equals a plus 9. And they want you to find the value of k when a equals 2. So these equations are showing you a relationship from one quantity to the other between two different variables. And later we'll use these with word problems so you can see how you can apply these to real situations. But for now, we'll just keep it simple with the equations. So in this relationship, A is the input. A is in the problem. It's the input. Also known as the independent variable. K is the output. That's the one outside. Okay, that is the dependent variable. So substitute 2 for A in the equation to find the value of K, because they want to know what K is when A is 2. So you just substitute, replace A with 2, 2 plus 9. So you evaluate this problem now following the order of operations, but in this case, there is only one operation, and you get 11. So that means when A is 2, K is 11. So let's try this. Let's do another example. In this case, they ask us to use the equation Q equals R minus 6 to find the value of Q when R equals 7. So the relationship between Q and R is that Q is whatever R is minus 6. So if R is 7, we're going to replace this R with 7. So we're going to replace this R with 7. And Q equals 7 minus 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. So that means that Q equals 1 when R equals 7. Use the equation U equals Z plus 20 to find the value of U when Z equals 4. So Z is in the problem. It's the independent variable. It's the input. So we're going to replace Z with 4 for this problem. And when we simplify this expression, 4 plus 20, we get 24. So that means U equals 24 when Z equals 4. And remember here we have 2 is next to F. Remember that shows you multiplication, right? When you have a number next to a variable, that shows you multiplication. So here they want you to find G when F is 2. So if you replace this F with 2, then it's not going to be 22, it's going to be 2 times 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. So when F is 2, G is 4. So that's the relationship between those two variables. Let's talk about BB.8. All right, here's an example for BB.8. Now they're not just giving you an equation, they're giving you a real life situation that goes along with the equation. So the situation in real life, the pattern that exists in real life is being described by this equation, and it's also represented in this table. So these 3 things are all connected. There's 3 different ways of representing a relationship. So here we have Kira's parrot is 7 years older than her cat. C represents the cat's age. P represents the parrot's age. So complete the table using the equation P, the parrot's age, is equal to C, the cat's age, plus 7. Which makes sense because they said the parrot is 7 years older than the cat. So if we want to finish this table here, these values are already filled in, and it makes sense that when the cat is 1, the parrot is 8. When the cat is 2, the parrot is 9. Down here, they want us to say when the cat is 4, how old is the parrot? So when C equals 4, so again, just like we did with BB.5, if we replace this C with 4 and then evaluate it, 4 plus 7 is 11. So we're going to put 11 here. All right, an electronics store has 10 permanent employees who work all year. The store also hires some temporary employees to work during the busy holiday season. Let A represent the number of temporary employees, and B represent the total number of employees during the holiday shopping season. So this equation describes what they just described in words. B, the total number of employees, is equal to A, the number of temporary employees, plus the 10 permanent employees. And coming down here to 4A, when we have 4 temporary employees, how many total employees do we have? So you substitute that in, 4 plus 10 is 14. So there would be 14 total employees when we have 4 temporary employees. Exercise BB.6 is required for the enrichment class and extra credit for the other classes. Yeah, I know enrichment, you can complain about how unfair that is, but it is what it is. So here we have an example of BB.6. Now you are dealing with word problems, but you're still doing the same thing. You're still basically just substituting. So just make sure you're substituting the numbers into the correct variable. In this problem, we have an equation that shows how the time required to screen print a batch of shirts is related to the number of shirts in the batch. So the variable S here represents the number of shirts in the batch, and the variable T represents the time required to screen print the shirts. So how long does it take to screen print a batch of 7 shirts? Well, they did say that S represents the shirts, so we're going to replace the S with 7, or replace, substitute. In this case, they're using the phrase plug in. So you're plugging in 7 for the S and then just evaluating. T is 10. T was the time, so it takes 10 minutes to screen print a batch of 7 shirts. So you just need to pay attention to which variable represents which quantity and make sure you're substituting appropriately. All right, so we have an equation here that shows the amount of dough Joy has prepared is related to the number of hours she has spent working at the bakery. So the variable H represents the number of hours worked, and the variable D represents the amount of dough prepared. So how much dough did Joy prepare if she worked for 3 hours? They told us H. H represents number of hours, so we're going to replace this H with 3. So when you replace that H with 3, you have D equals 3 plus 12. So that means D equals 15. Here's another one. This equation shows how the time required to ring up a customer is related to the number of items being purchased. So the variable P represents the number of items being purchased, and the variable T represents the time required to ring up the customer. So how long does it take to ring up a customer with 11 items? So P represents the number of items being purchased. This is 11 items that we're purchasing. So we replace this P with 11 to get the time that it takes. So 11 plus 21 would be 32. So the time it takes is 32 seconds. And again, here, please remember that when you have a number next to a variable, that indicates multiplication. So in this case, when they tell you that the money that Arlington Middle School spends on workbooks is related to the total number of workbooks they buy, and T represents the number of workbooks, D represents the cost. So how much would it cost? So what would be D when we buy a total of 1 workbook? And they told us that T was the workbook. So we just replace T with 1. 41 times 1 is just 41. So BB.6 is extra credit. If you score 100 on BB.6, you get 5 extra credit points on your next minor assessment. If you score a 90, you will get 4 extra credit points on your next minor assessment. If you score an 80, you get 3 extra credit points. If you score 70, you'll get 2. If you score 60, you get 1. And anything less than that, sorry, you're not getting any extra credit. So good luck with these 3 exercises, and we will talk soon.